question?
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, here we go. The process of soul making is the undoing of this illusion. I apologize for that, and I'm glad, Robert, that you came. Because he already gave me comments and questions, so he didn't have to come at all. He knew what was going to happen. Well, he might not know what was going to happen, but anyway. The process of soul making is the undoing of this illusion and of the harm it does us. And the natural and fitting final step in the undoing is simply this: that we at last realize we may set no condition whatever on our allegiance to God and dispose ourselves accordingly. Our attitude must finally be one of complete submission, whatever the conditions in which we are found, however obscure their rationale, and however hidden their outcome may be. To stop even slightly short of this is to withhold the last bit of ourselves from God, to place our own understanding of our good before His, and so deny His right to what, if we will truly be formed in His likeness, He must demand of each of us. Everything. How, then, is seemingly gratuitous suffering defeated in the life of the sufferer? The answer, somewhat surprisingly, is that it is defeated simply by our accepting it. Indeed, by our accepting it even in its otherwise gratuitousness. In Christian theology, the paradigm for this is Christ Himself, who, though divine, did not grasp at equality with God, but rather took on our nature, and being found in that nature, humbled Himself and became obedient unto death, even death on a cross. The horrendous sufferings of the world offer everyone the same opportunity. There are for all of us hardships that cannot be reversed, problems that do not work out, unhappy endings. Above all, the unhappy ending of our own death. Such things cannot be changed. But there is something we can do about them. We can acknowledge our total dependence on God, resolve that though He slay us, yet we shall trust in Him and see things through in the abiding hope that He has ordered everything to our good. And if I suggest it is in so doing that we give up our last claim to ourselves, then above all other suffering, it is the seeming gratuitous suffering that God has ordered not only to our good, or that God has most ordered, not only to our good, but to the true fulfillment of our destinies, to the final restoration of that friendship between Himself and us that we each reject when we reenact the sin of Adam. Okay? So the idea then is essentially this, that the point of gratuitous suffering is to get us to the point where we don't ask any questions. Right? Think about the sufferings of Job. Right? The problem is that you have to let go of any kind of a demand for justification. And that's what gratuitous suffering is all about. That is, I take, one of the final steps in our undergoing the transformation that is important to enjoy friendship with God. Now, okay, it's 10 minutes to 5, and I have a little bit more I wanted to say, but why don't I stop there, and we'll do some questions. Okay?
Well, I do like the bottom line. I have some questions about the theoretical journey on the way to it. Suppose God had never created anything.
Right.
Then there'd be no defeat of evil, right?
Right.
But that world, a possible world in which God never creates anything, is as good as any possible world can be, isn't it?
I don't know. Why would I say that?
Well, suppose it isn't, for the sake of argument. Then God wouldn't actualize such a world, would He? If He saw that there was a clearly better world?
If He saw that there was a clearly better world, well, if you want to take that kind of deliberational model, then no.
That's all we have.
No, we don't. That's not all we have.
Well, what else have we got?
Well, we have a model where He actually creates the world rather than having a plan that He examines and then manufacturing it.
Think of it like Aristotle's explanation of why the world is round. Of course, there wasn't a time when the world was round, but if the world hadn't been round, it would have been pulled into the shape of roundness. I think we really do need some kind of crutch here to think about why one world, God actualizes one world rather than another. That is contemplating which way to actualize things. He's not going to actualize a state of affairs when there's clearly a better one, is He?
Let's put it this way. The state of affairs that He actually actualizes will, if He is a perfect God, will be the best possible state of affairs.
So there is no possible world in which God doesn't create anything.
given the way things worked out, he will not have done that, right?
Given the way things, well, we're talking about all possible circumstances when we talk about
There are no
all
possibilities prior to God's actually creating the world he creates. That comes first. Possibilities are built out of that.
A possible world is a maximal possible state of affairs. Is there a maximal possible state of affairs that includes the possibility of God not creating anything?
Yes.
I can't, sorry, I'm going to have to go away with this because I can't make a coherent whole, metaphysical whole out of this position.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There's a lot to admire in the theodicy. One question I had is, it isn't entirely clear to me what it says for those who wind up in the position of goats rather than sheep on Judgment Day in terms of the prize parable.
Yeah, I did try to touch that issue a little bit. I did finish out that particular part of it. And I did have something in the original paper, which is considerably longer from which this is taken. One might say something like this, that if you have someone who finally rejects God's friendship and chooses a condition of alienation from God, that it would not be appropriate that any suffering that they undergo be defeated through the process of positive soul-making. Okay? It might, however, be defeated in their adopting a repining attitude and then that turning out to be self-destruction. Because that would simply be a continuation of the theme of self-destructiveness of suffering that I talked about earlier when I talked about its diminishment. So it might be that in the case of the goats, the right thing is that suffering should be defeated simply through being self-destructive. Now that sort of implies a kind of view of hell that is debatable. Okay, one of those sort of wasting away conceptions of hell. But I think that's the way I would want to take that particular issue.
So if I've got the nuts and bolts of your theodicy correctly, it seems like you're saying that suffering contributes to soul making either directly, where one's own suffering has the potential to contribute to the development of one's own soul, or indirectly, where one's suffering has the potential to contribute to the development of someone else's soul. And it's that latter sort in which you were able to handle Rose's fawn, right? Where the suffering of the fawn at least has the potential to contribute to the development of other people. They see suffering, they are motivated to alleviate the experience.
Yeah, well, yes, okay. Go ahead. There's a point to be added here. Go ahead.
Well, it just seems like there are cases of suffering which don't contribute to the development of anyone's soul. Presumably lots of fawns die in isolation and have these horrible
but we know that.
of suffering.
We know that.
Well, but...
So why don't they contribute? If we know that they're there, and they're part, part of it, what I'm trying to get here in part is this, that one of the things that prompts us to alleviate suffering is that we know that there's suffering that we don't know is there. Okay? That's really what Rose's example is. It's not as if nobody ever dreamt that a fawn would die in the forest fire. It's just that he reminds us of it. And in so reminding us, he reminds us that there's all kinds of suffering out there, right, that we never thought of. That's the specific instances that we've never picked on. But we can have the general knowledge that there are many, many such instances. And that knowledge can itself have an effect on us as far as advancing our conduct is concerned. Right now you might add, the point to be added is this, that in the case, when you talk about each individual instance of suffering requiring that it result in good to that person, the case to be made for that, and this is the debatable thing. Peter's written about this, and Eleanor Stump has written about it, and the case on Eleanor Stump's side, who argues for the idea, is that God, in creating the world, basically does it for us and for our salvation, and therefore that we are to be viewed as ends in ourselves, and God would not allow us to be used as a means. Okay? Now the same is true of fawns. Right? So in their case, it might be that no more is needed than that they're suffering from efforts to alleviate suffering, and that would be enough. Okay? But I think your question really was on that plane anyway.
at all.